Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Raising the Flipping Bar. I'm your host, Derek Marlin, and we just got done with a fantastic Elevation Academy, and that's where we train people in every step of our system. And one of the common themes that came out of that here last week, and it really just gave me the idea for today's episode. So the lifeblood of this podcast is really giving you exactly what we're doing today, current trends, current topics, and current strategies. So today we're going to talk about rehabs. Should you do cosmetic flips or should you do full-blown flips? Let's jump right into today's episode. Welcome to Raising the Flipping Bar, the go-to podcast for aspiring and seasoned real estate investors. I'm your host, Derek Marlin, and I'm the CEO of Elevation. We're a real estate investment company based right here in Denver, Colorado. We'll dive into smart investment strategies, market insights, and essential tips for scaling your real estate ventures. Whether you're making your first investment or your 100th investment, this podcast is your blueprint for success in the ever-evolving world of real estate investing. Get ready to elevate your real estate game and begin your journey with me. So as I mentioned, we had the Academy. This will probably come out within about a 2-week time span. And this really came up from one of our awesome clients. And it's kind of cool because we had our client's wife attend the Academy about a year ago, and she was fantastic. And she actually just put it on. We just found this out. She just put it on her husband's calendar, as he said, and he just came to the last Academy. So we've got two super smart people, two corporate executives. They've got rental properties. They're getting into flipping and investing. And to me, they really helped kind of resonate with this was one of their questions. And it was all about, should we do cosmetic remodels? Should we do full-blown remodels? What I would love for you guys to do listening to this episode is actually cast your vote. I really want to hear from you, hear your thoughts on, do you really prefer cosmetic remodels? Do you prefer full-blown remodels? Again, I'd love to hear what your guys' thoughts are. I feel like the first thing we need to accomplish is we need to define what is a cosmetic versus what is a full rehab or a full fix and flip. So if we think about the cosmetic first, I'm going to give you kind of our definition of what we're doing currently at Elevation. We're doing it in Metro Denver today. Obviously, this varies drastically in different parts of the country at different price points. But again, everything we're talking about is what we're doing right now. So on average, they're like 3 to 4 week projects. They are $20,000 to roughly $40,000 of renovation budget, and that is both materials and labor. On average, it's going to generate a $20,000 to $30,000 net profit. So definitely good amounts of money, but not killing it from an ROI perspective. That on average is going to be about a 7 to 8% return on investment. Now, not trying to get too far into the weeds, but that would be as if you were purchasing the property and not using leverage. If you're borrowing hard money, and let's say that you're putting down $100,000 to take that deal down, and you're making $20,000 or $30,000, your cash on cash return, meaning the amount of cash you invest versus the amount you actually generate, is 20 to 30%. So obviously still really, really good, but I want to kind of set the stage for like what is truly a cosmetic remodel. You're normally not pulling permits. On average, most of your major systems, so think roof, think windows, think HVAC, think sewer line, those are typically going to have to be in good shape for it to even be considered a cosmetic flip. So those are normally all going to have to probably be good to go. The other thing is you've got to be super, super strategic on where you spend your money. With cosmetics, you don't have a big budget. We just talked about it. You're spending between $20,000 and $45,000 on a property. If you spend in the wrong areas, that's going to blow your budget right away. And the way that you determine that is you have to have it supported by the comps. So for example, if you're in your budget doing a very exotic bathroom in the basement, but every other comp has just kind of the regular builder grade basement that they put in 15 years ago, in my opinion, you're spending money in areas you're never going to get back. So you really need to be sharp, and you need to sharpen your pencil on where you spend that money. So again, that's kind of defining what a cosmetic remodel may be. And really sometimes the decision is made for you. If somebody sends you a deal, or you're looking on the MLS and it needs everything, it needs every major system, it's totally trashed, people call it a handyman special or an investor special, it's not even an option. But all things being equal, that's how we define cosmetic. Okay, so we've got cosmetic dialed. Let's jump into full rehab. Typically for us, that's going to be a 6 to a 12 week project. you're going to be spending between, on average, $75,000, kind of all the way up to $150,000. We've definitely done more. Last couple of projects we just did were between $250,000 and $300,000. And I've got a little shell shock from that. So we're kind of going back to our bread and butter and back to our basics. But you're going to be spending between 75 and 150K on rehab. Net profit is around $55,000. And so again, net profit is after you've paid everything back. You've paid your hard money lender back. You've paid for the rehab. You've accounted for all your interest, all your closing costs, your commissions, your property taxes, the whole thing. Again, what money is in your net at the end of the day? 55 grand. That's going to generate on average, again, across the board, about a 10% return on investment. So still a good ROI. When it comes to permits, you're probably pulling them 50% of the time. And I get this question a lot. Some people are like, oh, I should pull it on everyone, or I should never pull it. I'm honestly kind of right in the middle. What would trigger you pulling permits is, let's say you're buying a property and it has an unfinished basement. If you finish the basement, you're adding a laundry room down there, you're adding bathrooms, you need to be pulling permits. If you're taking old crappy kitchen out and putting nice new kitchen in and it's roughly the same format, you don't need to pull a permit on that. So for these full rehabs, on average, you're pulling it about 50% of the time. And then one of the things that we actually teach us in our academy and we really try to bring up to our clients, you're doing about 2 of the major systems. If everything is shot, you can still, of course, do it, but you've got to get a significant discount on that property. And you need to have a margin of where you buy it versus where you sell it, probably 300 or 400 or more. These, let's call them again, go back to my sports background. These doubles, these base hits, if you will, you're on average creating about a $200,000 to a $250,000 spread. And again, a spread is the difference between where you buy it and where you sell it. So that kind of sets the stage for cosmetic remodels versus full-blown remodels. Again, I think to me, we always talk about our why. Why are you doing this? And so really looking at your strategy is something that's also important. And really how I want to set the stage for this episode is, if you have 2 deals side by side and you only have capital to do one of them at any given point, which one should you choose? Sometimes the decision is unfortunately, made for you, because if you're out looking for deals and you've got capital to put to work and you want to do a flip, and the only ones you're finding are full-blown remodels, then just do those. But I really want you to hopefully think of, how do you increase your deal volume? And if you've got choices, how do you make that choice? So let's talk about the pros and the cons of the cosmetic flip. On the pro side, obviously it is a lower upfront cost, not only on if you're doing this with cash, but if you're doing it with hard money. So that's a big one. On average, if you're doing it with hard money, you're going to be putting down about 15% of the purchase price and of the renovation. It also hits our number one metric, which is dollars per day. So at Elevation, we measure what's the best deal of the amount of net profit we make divided by the number of days it takes us to do the deal. And that is purchase, all of renovation, putting it on the market, and actually getting to the closing table. Our sweet spot, honestly, in my opinion, was 2019. And that's when we did the greatest volume. We still did good profitability. It wasn't like the crazy COVID days where every deal became a home run, but we were turning projects on average in 97 days. So it was essentially a mixture of a little bit of cosmetic and definitely some full-blown remodels, doing about 2 months worth of work, putting them on the market, pricing them right, and selling them fairly quickly. So that 97 days was kind of the sweet spot, and it's what we're trying to work back towards. The other good thing is that the faster turnaround time kind of hits our other favorite term, which is called the velocity of money. And that is, how fast can you move that same amount of money? If you think about it, most people would obviously want to make more money per deal. But if one deal you're making $58,000, but it takes you 7 months, versus the other cosmetic deal that we just described, you're making $30,000, but it takes you 2 months, you can turn that money and move that money and theoretically do a couple deals, diversify your risk, get more cash flow going, and actually make more money in the same period of time than your one larger deal. So keep that term in mind, velocity money. It's one of our favorites. The other thing is, it's less rehab work. So I think it's really good for this to be a starting point for less experienced investors. I think coming right out of the gate and doing a $250,000 remodel that is 6 months in time can be a little stressful and a little scary. The other nice thing is that it correlates to obviously going faster. Kind of a little flip tip, if you will, is it gives you the ability to work with contractors that aren't quite as skilled, meaning not to say that they don't do good work. Like if you're laying trim and baseboards, it needs to be nice and it needs to be square and correct, not crappy work. But there's certain people that either don't have the ability to even pull a permit to do a full-blown remodel, or they've never done, a major gut remodel where they've never finished an entire basement. So by doing cosmetics, you can actually dip into that contractor pool that's typically going to save you money and give you the ability to do repeat business. So again, saving time, saving money, not having to pull permits 95% of the time on cosmetics, that is huge. The other thing is it gives you the ability to run multiple projects. So you have, again, same pool of money divided among a couple different projects. It diversifies risk and it increases cash flow. So the other thing is it gives you the ability to run multiple projects at once. And that not only diversifies your risk, but then also gives you the ability to have increased cash flow. So it just keeps you essentially making more money at different periods of time rather than putting all your eggs in one basket. The other thing that I was kind of thinking about on cosmetics is I was looking at my nerd business library, and one of my favorite authors is Malcolm Gladwell, and he's got a theory or a concept called the 10,000 hours theory. And essentially what that is that you don't become an expert until you do 10,000 hours worth of work. And so with this one, you could actually get a lot more projects in. You could learn a lot faster. Yes, you're not doing the huge ones on the full-blown remodels, but I think if we think through the Malcolm Gladwell lens, I think that's kind of a cool benefit. Dealing with hard money lenders is the biggest headache real estate investors have. I thought that's just how hard money had to be until I met Backflip. Backflip is changing the lending game by actually making loans stress-free. And I know this firsthand because I personally use them for my own deals. Let me tell you, their free app makes real estate investing effortless. With just a few taps, I can apply for loans tailored exactly to my needs, whether it's low interest rates, high leverage, or even deferred payments. The best part, I can secure financing in less than 2 weeks, making it easier to scale my business and close more profitable deals. But it doesn't stop there. Backflip instantly provides all the data I need to estimate profits, including a curated list of high-quality comps, saving me hours of work. Unlike other lenders who disappear after funding, Backflip is a true partner for elevation. Their team is always just a call away and ready to answer any questions and offer support. With Backflip, you get the data and the cash you need to jump on good investments quickly and with confidence. Click the link in the show notes to download the free app. Now let's get back to the show. Let's obviously talk about the cons too. Obviously, lower net profit. You're not going to make quite as much money. There is definitely a risk that, let's say the market turns, you need to price it for less money. If you go over in rehab, you have less of a chunk to start with in profit. So you might make way less money on a net profit basis, or you might even lose money. So there's obviously some risk there. They're harder to find. In Denver, finding cosmetic deals, the tough thing there is you are starting to compete with more of the traditional, or what we call the retail buyer, meaning somebody who's going to buy a house, maybe put in a little bit of sweat equity or buy a condo, fix a couple things up themselves, and they're going to live there themselves. They can usually pay more than we can pay. We're also going to get into multiple offers and bidding wars from time to time, especially during the spring and during the summer. So again, pros and cons to each side. If we flip the coin and go over to the pros and cons of the full-blown rehab, let's start with the pros first. Obviously, higher net profit, pretty simple there, but you are obviously making more money. I also think you have the ability to have more inventory to go after. So you've got a little bit more bargaining power, or your agents have a little bit more bargaining power. The other thing is not everybody can afford to do full-blown remodels. So it just takes more money, whether you're funding the whole thing in cash or you're using a private money lender or a hard money lender. Not everybody can take that down. Some people only can stick with cosmetics or condos, for example. The other thing is that it can really dial in your system for bigger projects. So kind of in a complementary nature to the pro on the cosmetic side, you can get really good at doing these projects if that's where you want to focus your time. And, something that's kind of near and dear to a lot of our staff members' hearts is the creative side. So you can be more creative. You got a bigger, healthier budget where you can spend more money. Again, always spend it strategically, but with cosmetics, you can only do so much. And the other cool thing is, I think it gives you the option to stand out versus your comps or your competitors, your comparisons. So definitely a bunch of pros. If we think about the cons, obviously higher costs up front. So you're having to spend more money. Definitely longer turnaround. So whatever the opposite of velocity of money would be, the slowing down of your money, if you will, you're not turning that money as fast. So you have to take that into consideration. The other thing is by doing more intensive renovations, there's only a certain bandwidth of contractors that you can work with that have the experience to do a good job on a larger remodel. There's also a certain amount of GCs that have the license to pull permits. And so you just might unfortunately rule people out if they can't pull permits for you to execute on that specific flip. The other thing is that by doing larger rehabs, normally you're dealing in relatively higher price points. And so when you have to cut the price, if the house is not selling, if there's more homes on the market and more competition, you're going to be making larger price cuts. Let's hope that you have a bigger net profit to pull from and still be safe. But a lot of times, if again, go back to our earlier definition, $55,000 in net profit, that's typically two $25,000 price cuts. And you've just done all this work to net $5,000. So there are definitely cons to doing full-blown remodels. I think the last thing I want to hit on for this quick episode is how do you determine whether you're going to tackle a cosmetic flip versus a full flip? And for me, I'm going to kind of phrase this as, I guess, the elevation order of importance. I think the number one thing you got to take into account is deal flow. Maximize your marketing, maximize your relationship with agents, with wholesalers, with any way that you're helping find and source deals, both on and off market, so that you have choices. Again, if you're just kind of slowly going along and you only get swings of the plate for cosmetic deals or full rehabs, then you don't have as many options. So get your deal flow and get your marketing going. The other thing is that the property condition and the potential, 9 times out of 10, it will make that decision for you. You cannot go into a house that had a water leak and flooded the basement and, people were smoking meth upstairs and say, oh, that's going to be a cosmetic remodel. That's obviously not a cosmetic remodel. You got to take that baby down to the studs and you got to do it right. So the property itself might dictate that for you. The other thing is think about your investment metrics and think about your personal goals. And this is something that we actually start the Elevation Academy teaching this. We want to know, what is your why personally? What is your investment or your professional why? And that will help you dictate, do you want to do these full-blown remodels because maybe you've got a really great spot in your heart for design? Then cool, then you should do that. Or if you want to create a well-oiled machine and you're thinking of real estate as a business and it's a way to make nice chunks of cash, I've got a buddy, all he does is flip condos. That's awesome. And he does a crap load of them. So the way that you want to define that is your 3 major investment metrics. For us, number 1 is dollars per day. Again, that is the net profit that you're making divided by the number of days. We then go to net profit as our number 2 way that we're going to decide, is this deal a yay or a nay? And that is the actual profit you're making after you've paid off all of your expenses. Then actually third is the ROI, or the return on investment. Because again, a lot of times you can have a low ROI, let's say it's a 7 or 8% return on investment, but if you're in and out of that project in 30 days, that's a good deal. Versus you might make a 14% return on investment, but if it takes you a year to do that, theoretically, you're not making as much money. The other thing is the capital considerations. How much money do you have? Are you borrowing hard money? Are you working friends and family money, the private money? Do you have actual cash? That will help dictate whether you can or can't do full-blown rehabs versus maybe starting with cosmetics. Again, kind of as another flip tip, I always say try to have 3 months worth of personal reserves and 3 months worth of business reserves, and then see if over time you can scale that up to 6 months. That gets you into a really nice sweet spot where you don't feel like you have to take a deal. Something I was just thinking about that really wasn't in my notes, but just came to mind, which is people that are using in-house crews. I hear a lot of people say, oh, well, I've got my crews and I've got to keep my crews busy, so I'm going to take down a deal. And even if they don't make much money, they're thinking about paying overhead. I don't personally love that. We do a pretty good volume and we don't have in-house crews. There is such an ability for you to work with contractors in more of a 1099 capacity. So that's something that just came to mind. Just really factor that in of what's your strategy and what's your business model. Okay, so as we wrap up today's episode, hopefully you've gotten a ton from today and our last couple of episodes, but it's election season. I want you guys to cast your vote. Are we voting for cosmetics? Are we voting for full-blown rehabs? I want to see who wins our, fictitious elevation election. Definitely come to one of our Fix and Flip live events. We've got a couple projects going right now, so you can kind of see how we're making these decisions real time. You guys know it, and I beat it like a dead horse, but I want to teach you what we're learning today, and I want to learn from you guys as well. So connect, engage, follow us, definitely give us your information, see how we can help one another. So hopefully you guys got a ton out of today's episode. What I would love for you to do is cast your vote on the cosmetic side of the aisle, if you will, cast your vote on the full-blown rehab. I really want to know what you guys are seeing in today's market environment. Hopefully you got a ton of information today, and thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys on the flip side. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Raising the Flipping Bar. If you found value in our insights and stories, let's keep the conversation going. Connect with me on social media and be sure to share this episode with friends or colleagues who might benefit. Your feedback and reviews help us grow and reach more listeners like you. So please, if you enjoyed this episode, leave us a review. Thanks again to the Elevation Academy for sponsoring today's show. If you're interested in learning more, click the link in the show notes below. And remember, every property tells a story, every deal brings a lesson. Keep reaching for those goals, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for listening and watching Raising the Flipping Bar. Just a basic overall disclaimer is that A, this is not legal advice. B, this is not tax advice. C, this is not financial advice. I hope you get the gist, but I'm obviously not a lawyer, not a CPA. Hell, I'm not even a real estate agent, actually. But in general, we hope you get a ton of value out of this, but there is a bit of a disclaimer. Please consult a professional if you have any questions whatsoever. Thanks.